welcome to episode 72 of the Sports Geek podcast. On this week's podcast, I catch up with Bryan Srabian from the San Francisco Giants to talk about World Series, social media, and how it has changed over the years.
Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host, who has passed 50,000 podcast downloads. That's over 1,500 days of listening time, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. My name is Sean Callanan from Sports Geek, and don't you love stats? You can make them mean anything. Yes, we've passed 50,000. Actually, since I've given that to DJ Joel, we've actually passed 60,000 downloads. So thank you very much for everyone downloading. It does equate to over 1,500 days listening time. If you put it end to end, you can do anything with stats. I'm not going to go too long in this intro because I had a great chat with Bryan Srabian, and because we're both sports geeks and we love talking about all things digital and social media, we went long. So I'd much rather you listen to myself and Bryan. Thank you very much for listening to the podcast. Please send me a tweet if you are listening for the first time or if you're listening for the 72nd time, this being episode 72. My Twitter handle is @Sean Callanan, or you can tweet @SportsGeek. And if you could share it with your friends on that you are listening, very much appreciative. It's one of the reasons we are getting the downloads, because you are sharing it on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and the like. That's pretty much it. I'm going to dive into this interview. Afterwards, we're also going to talk a little bit about Seat in San Francisco. I'll give you a bit of an update on the plans for Seat for next year. For those of you who are in Australia, I want to get a few more Australians over there. Other than that, I'm going to get stuck right into it. Here's my chat with Bryan Srabian from the San Francisco Giants. Very happy to welcome World Series winning from the San Francisco Giants, Director of Digital Media, Bryan Srabian. Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast, Bryan.
Sean, it's an honor to be here. I'm a big fan, and happy to, and thank you for the intro. Happy to be talking to you today.
Yeah, it was actually funny. When I was going through my notes, we actually chatted. Ken Logan introduced us after I went to my first Seat, and we actually did get on the phone way back then, talking about doing something online. It took me another 2 years to start doing a podcast, so I should have just listened to those notes and started a couple of years earlier.
Well, I don't know. I think it's probably in my best interest to listen and learn for the next 2 years before I start talking to you. You've had some heavy hitters on here before, Sean. So, I know you've got a big audience, so always want to be prepared.
Oh, thank you very much. Now, one of the videos that I do show people when I'm talking about social media is one of those early videos that Twitter made with yourself, talking about the San Francisco Giants and I guess the first experience of winning a world championship. You want to take us back to those early days, being in San Francisco, obviously being the hub of tech innovation and where all the digital innovations happening with Facebook and Twitter and the like and all that happening. What was it like being in San Francisco as that was happening?
It was, that's a great memory. It was pretty surreal because my world exactly, my previous position with the Giants, I was director of marketing and entertainment. I ran all the scoreboard videos and music and did a lot of the game presentation. And I left the Giants only to come back that season in 2010. And it was just like, it was almost, for me, it was like working at a startup. It was, okay, figure out how we're going to use Twitter, how we're going to use Facebook. Those were the two tools that we had. And it was just kind of building from scratch and working with all of our in the departments. But obviously, we didn't expect the team to have the season that they did, and it all kind of came together. And it was really exciting because we actually had a lot of momentum. We had a strategy, and to see the Giants win the World Series, and for us, it was kind of an interesting, our first kind of social media experience behind the scenes, and seeing all the excitement and a lot of new fans coming as well, a lot of younger fans joining, and the huge growth that we had in social media, specifically Twitter, was pretty awesome.
I mean, I think 2010, 2009 was sort of when all celebrities, you had the stories of Shaq and the Ashton Kutchers having a race with
Sure.
CNN. You know, that was it was an athlete driven and a celebrity driven thing, but definitely 2010. You know, I have the same stories with Collingwood winning in 2010 and seeing the exposure on Facebook and Twitter at the same point, because it was very much greenfield, and startup's a good way of putting it, because you didn't know what was going to work. There was a lot of experimentation in the space, but it was really about letting the fans use the platforms however they wanted, and the teams were really just along for the ride.
Yeah, no, and, you know, we definitely were not the first team on social media, and there were a lot of other teams in other sports, especially the NBA, which were kind of forward thinking. But for us, it was somewhat new, and for me, it was new. And you know, there's a few things that we tried that was a little ahead of our time in baseball, at least. I mean, we started conversing with fans. We established kind of a voice, maybe a little more edgy than we are now, because we were just kind of growing and learning. But we definitely were very active, and yeah, we kind of let the fans have their voice. And I think that was really the first key for us, was, you know, making it a two-way conversation, and acknowledging fans. And you know, now that's obviously old school, if you will, and it's more about content perhaps. But yeah, back then it was really interesting to see the early adopters of fans engaging, and for us to try new and different things, and to follow the likes of Shaq and other celebrities and brands that were doing interesting things. It was really cool at the time. Maybe even, you know, ahead of our time in baseball, but definitely was, yeah, granted. And when you win, you know, you get away with a little bit more. You have that higher engagement rate. So that was probably the icing on the cake.
Yeah, I've heard you say a few times, you know, winning a World Series is the best marketing strategy you can ever have from a point of view. You're lucky enough to do it 3 times now. Who are you patting on the back the most to keep things ticking over at the Giants?
I don't know. I have no idea you know, because it's funny, Sean, after, you know, and I've been a lifelong Giants fan and worked with the organization for a number of years. So when you win a World Series, I mean, even just getting to the playoffs, you don't take for granted. It's just an exciting time. And obviously there's from the business side, you're fortuitous to, you know, obviously do well there. But when you go all the way and then you win it, there's nothing quite like it. And you kind of say to yourself, this is a once in a lifetime experience. I mean, I remember everything. I remember the parade was probably the highlight of having that parade in San Francisco and being a part of that. And you say this will never happen again. Well, now we've gone through it 3 times in just 5 years. So it's almost embarrassing, but at the same time, you know, I have kids that just think that this is what you do. Every other year you go to the World Series and we have to go to this parade and miss our Halloween, and they don't understand the perspective. But yeah, I mean, it's we know that in sports that, you know, you can't bank on, you know, your team's performance, and you have to prepare for the best, and you know, and obviously for things not to go so well. So it definitely tests your I guess your ability to pivot in a quick environment in terms of success and failure. But when you do succeed, you don't apologize for it, and you take advantage of that. And I think we've done a fairly good job at that.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit of a throwaway line saying winning is a great strategy, but really it's about being ready for that moment. And one of the coaches over here in Australian Rules talks about a premiership clock or a championship clock, and depending on where it is on the clock, the closer it is to midnight means your team is primed to be in that window to win. And I think what you've got to be able to do from a social and a digital point of view is prime your fans and get ready for your fans for those moments, whether it is something as big as a world championship win, or it could just be a big, you know, interstate rival or an interleague rival in MLB, to give your fans that content so they can go with it, whether it be retweeting it or liking on Facebook or sharing your content, right, or just getting behind a concept.
No, I agree with that. And I think, you know, again, getting to that point, I think everyone gets excited. You're like, what are you going to do? What's your strategy? And, the one thing I've just learned is that, let your fans have their, the fans have always been a big part of our strategy, and especially in San Francisco, not just because of it's tech savvy, but just because there's been a really strong connection with our team and our players and our fans in the ballpark, and our TV ratings have been strong. So we have this really great relationship. But at the same time, I think you don't want to do too much. You let those moments kind of stand on their own. I think, much like reporters always say, don't be a part of the story. Let that story just speak for itself. And that's kind of what we try to do. We're telling this story, and we're trying to come up with creative and innovative ways to connect our fans to that story. And our fans are obviously a part of that. So oftentimes, we might go overboard in certain instances, but obviously when you win, you kind of let that moment speak for itself. And now we have so many different channels to tell that story, and we let the fans, obviously, we want to highlight them as much as possible and connect them as best we can.
Yeah, and I think there's a real good lesson to be learnt there from, some of the best broadcasters across different sports, just being able to pause, let the silence and the atmosphere of, silence from the broadcast, but let the atmosphere of the stadium take over the broadcast, whether it be TV or radio. The same is in social.
Right.
Like there's so much chatter there. Sometimes you just need to pull back and let the fans cheer, let them have the moment, and that's just as powerful than getting your message out there, because people can't retweet something you haven't sent. So if you just hold back, once you do push it out, or once you do push out that post, then the fans will jump all over it.
Yeah, and just like you said, we're on top of us talking, we're part of the fun is also seeing what everyone else is saying, and I think that, we've always been big proponents of user-generated content, whether it's a witty tweet or it's a video. We had a walk-off to get to the World Series, a walk-off home run. And, one of the best things that I saw were those, point of view videos, people from different parts of the stadium we had, there's a bar in New York named Finnerty's. That's a Giants bar. There's a lot of New York fans that are Giants fans, and they're, the video of the reaction in the bar, and we kind of spliced all those videos together to kind of show, the different reaction. And, I continue to see more reaction videos like that. So it's part of that. And, and so in turn for you taking a breath and tweet, it's to see what everyone else is saying and share that with everyone, and kind of make sure that everyone has, a voice. But you go back and I had our staff, we did like kind of a recap, and it's amazing just to see all the content. You forget how much content that you're doing in the moment, but you really, if you didn't watch the game at all or hear anything, you really do tell the story in many different ways. And it's kind of fun just to go back and look at it through the eyes of social media.
Yeah, definitely, and that's the thing. It is that second screen. It is what it is complementing what the fans are doing, especially for those ones watching at home or in a bar to get a few insights, snippets from the stadium, but also snippets from around the world of all the people that are following that game, especially the World Series. I wanted to ask you, just again going back on your background in game entertainment and activating things inside AT&T, like we're seeing a lot of people from a social point of view and just from a digital engaging the stadiums, trying to push back into that space in engaging the fans. Obviously, things like Wi-Fi things have to be rolled out, and you've been lucky enough to be Bill Schloer there at the Giants has rolled out what is, and I joke that the Wi-Fi at AT&T is better than my house.
Right.
To have that infrastructure in at AT&T. Your background in the game entertainment, how has that helped you in understanding sort of what the fans want at the game, as well as not distracting from the game itself?
Sure. I mean, I think that's the one area. And again, you're right. Everyone kind of has their own background. You might be a marketing major, which I was. English or journalism major in social media. You might have a background in video or film editing. But for me, I kind of came into this job of being the one that was hosting this party every 81 times a year, and
Yep.
it was all about setting the mood with music, and it was creating entertaining 90-second video features or games on the video screen. It was knowing the right we called them rally videos to play in the bottom of the ninth inning, and the right music stingers to play when a home run was hit. So all that to me was kind of the production of the game. And that's kind of what I think that, social media has kind of really evolved into that, at least for sports teams. It's become, obviously it's the face and the voice of the brand. So, and it's more than just reporting, the game score. I mean, we've gone from 2010 to 2014 now. There's so many different bloggers and media outlets, and each newspaper has a person tweeting. I mean, there's literally, 20 to 30 viable resources to get your news and information about the Giants or any team. So what can I add to make your experience, following that much more valuable and that much more connected? And I think that's where we come up with the entertaining features. And again, the event itself, like I said, sometimes you just let that event speak for itself. In the game, people just want, pictures, and they want video, and they want to be connected to the game. But, what am I doing today? What am I doing leading up to the game? And all those, the other moments. And I think that's what we try to think about, becoming creative with the ways that you announce a player signing or sell a ticket promotion. It's much more than just putting it out there, which you obviously can. But, I was just talking to a colleague about the Seattle Mariners just announced Nelson Cruz as their a new player, and he's known for his power and his home runs. And they went around Seattle putting broken these decals and made it look like their windshields were broken with a baseball in it, with a I'm very sorry message. And they tweeted all these pictures out. I thought that was pretty creative, and I think that's where the creativity comes when you start thinking about new ways to get your message across. And I think that also opens up the doors for working with others in your department or in your organization, cross-departmental synergies, if you will.
Yeah, and the thing is, because you've probably taken the infrastructure at AT&T for granted because it has been there. I think it's now into its 8th year. I think it's been a few iterations of infrastructure that's been put in there. But and I had this discussion with Mark Cuban on whether he wants the fans to pull the phones out and use their phones in stadium, whereas baseball, it's built for that in the same way that cricket is in Australia. It has that natural downtime. It has the ability to go, my favourite player's coming up to bat, or a pitcher is on a tear, I'm going to take out my phone. And you're seeing that stream coming through of people, taking photos. One, because you want to brag, you want to tell people that you're at baseball while everyone else is back at work. But you also want to, you want to share that memory with everyone. And it just fits. Like baseball's, it's one of the more perfect sports to engage. Whereas, I was in Europe recently and no one took their phone out because the game is constant, non-stop. If you turn away, you miss a goal. Whereas baseball and cricket sort of just fits perfectly for that social media experience, and that gets enhanced by using your phone at the game.
Well, yeah, and Sean, I don't need to tell you this. We've become addicted to our mobile devices, and it's there's a time and place for it. I understand. Mark Cuban, his statement has been very well publicized, and your discussion with him hits it on the head about sports. And it's funny, in 2000 when we first built our ballpark, this is pre-Wi-Fi, I don't even think the Palm Pilots were out, but a lot of our fans talked about, they wanted the experience to be a break from their technology and a break from, they wanted to get away from cell phones. And then when the iPhone kind of came along in congruence with what we had on our Wi-Fi channels, it really changed the atmosphere. And I think it's a balance. And, we never take our Wi-Fi for granted. We understand that that's really one of the the backbone to the success of our mobile strategy is and it's not just connecting with us. And we feel it's in 2014, it's almost a necessity and Bill Schlau does a great job of kind of describing, what are your must-have features of the game. You need food, you need seats, you need, restrooms, you need Wi-Fi. Really, you need to stay connected. If you don't, we're battling with that, with, like you said, with staying at home. And there's nothing quite like going to a live experience, and we need to continue to add to that. But yeah, for us, you're right. We're not asking you to, put your phones out every time, the batter's at the plate and to stay connected. There's people that like to look at stats and like to get closer. And then there's those that, to me, the big opportunities are, like you said, it's taking the Instagram photos or taking pictures on Twitter and sharing them within their networks. And that's the virtual postcard. There's nothing I can say or do that will encourage you more than your friends, sharing their experiences and saying, this is, here I am with my friends having a great night at AT&T Park. That's what we try to, subtly enhance as much as possible, is encouraging our fans to share those photos and those tweets and those Facebook posts just like that, because that word of mouth is just so powerful. So having that infrastructure in place makes that possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we've always advocated, whether it be, the simple act of favoriting photos on Instagram or favoriting tweets of fans, validating what they're doing will only continue to amplify that. And to extend what you were just saying there about in stadium, you've now effectively, I'm a really big believer in connecting online fans in real life to sort of really, make those connections, proper connections, not just loose connections that you're talking to someone online. And now you've got the SF Cafe in at AT&T Park to really make that connection of, you're a social fan, you're a Giants fan, and now you're at the game. You can see your tweets and you can see your photos and really educate even the small portion of fans that don't get social to realise, here's another way for me to experience the Giants. What was that project like, and how did fans respond to the cafe?
Well, yeah, the cafe, it's interesting. You're right. It started with us, and we're still, trying to find new ways to integrate social into the live experience. And I think it started with the fact that I felt that we were doing an excellent job if you weren't at the game. But we really weren't taking advantage of, in stadium. And how can we be, like you said, in this, with Twitter and Facebook just down the street and Instagram, literally a stone's throw away, how can we not be taking advantage of this? And so we started, posting different tweets and Instagrams on our scoreboard. But finding space on your scoreboard is pretty competitive with all the sponsorship features and the entertainment features. So we continued to find, and we looked internally and said, gosh, there's got to be a way that we can take advantage of this. Now, there really was nothing else out there. There were a few teams that had some social walls, if you will, that had interactive tweets, but there was no real zone. And so that was kind of an opportunity and a challenge to design a space. And it just so happened that a space opened up in center field. It used to be a Build-A-Bear. I don't know if you guys have Build-A-Bear, Sean, in Australia.
Yeah, we do have a few Build-A-Bears. Yeah. Yep.
Right. And you could only sell so many. I guess your kids can only buy so many until it's time to move on. So I think that was kind of the timing for us. And we put a Pete's Coffee in the cafe and said this would be a cool area for fans to purchase coffee. We built this beautiful screen, high-end digital screen, and then we designed with the local design agency on what it would look like, how it would display tweets and Instagram photos. And then we had an area for our staff to approve, and it was kind of like, here's the behind the scenes. And quite frankly, people were just as excited to see the behind the scenes, like, oh wow, you're the ones who tweet and post things. And so I think now this will be our third. We just finished our second season in the cafe, and this will be our third. And we're one of the challenges with that, as you know, is with technology. It's all about innovation and what's new and coming up with fresh ideas. So we've got to continue to push ourselves to say, okay, well, we've done all that and it's been great. And our fans really like it, but you don't want your fans to become bored, and you want to, the minute that we do one thing, another technology like Snapchat comes out, or Vine videos actually were were debuted like a week after we'd opened the cafe. So it was like, we had 6 months to catch up to that. So we're constantly trying to match what our fans want. But at the same time, we're also trying to think, a page out of Steve Jobs' book, you sometimes say, well, I don't know if our fans even know what they want. Let's try this and see how it works. And you have the sponsorship angle as well. And we have obviously great sponsors that want to be engaged with their fans in social media. So we're trying to come up with new ways that we can kind of monetize in that world as well. But to me, it's always about the fan experience and our fans. And we're trying to find out what's the best way that AT&T Park and the Giants can, bring social media to bring the fan experience and optimize it as best we can.
So where are you seeing Giants fans moving again? Because it's, especially in Silicon Valley, it's like, where's the new bright shiny thing? Where we're gravitating to? What's the next platform? We saw it was only a couple of weeks ago. Everyone was talking up Ello and going on there and praising it to be the Facebook killer, and then 3 weeks later everyone's back to normal. Where
I forgot my password. I logged in. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah,
and then now it's not even relevant. Right.
So where do you find that?
That's the big question.
Yeah, where do you find that tipping point to say, we're seeing a lot of, do you take the lead from the media that are talking up Snapchat? Do you look at what content's coming through on your feed and different things? Do you see more Vine videos starting coming through on Twitter? Because it is it is a return on effort. Like, how much work do you put into this platform? And say it is Snapchat, knowing that it's a younger demographic, and they're developing Snapchat stories. Is it a bit of a dipping the toe in the water and testing it and seeing how it works?
It's the answer is yes to all of them. I mean, I think you're right. The real we only have so many hours in the day, and we only have so many resources internally. And obviously, we're trying to slowly grow that. So you're looking for where our fans are, and obviously the three biggest for us are Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But with that being said, yeah, you do dip your toe into the water and try Snapchat out. To me, that was a really big one for us to try, because it was a very youthful. I've got nephews that are in high school and junior high, and I'm constantly, asking them and their friends, what are they using? What are you guys doing? And Snapchat seemed to be, something that was becoming kind of a regular feature in understanding the fact that, okay, it's different in the fact that it's a photo that lasts, up to 24 hours and it's gone. Obviously you can look at it for 10 seconds, but after 24 hours, that picture is no longer there. So there was something to that. Here's my story. So we really tried a few things with that, and I'm pretty interested in continuing that route. But with that being said, sometimes it's not just about, I don't think you can ever say that you've mastered Twitter or you mastered Facebook. There's always room for improvement. And I think even our strategy and the way that we were posting was changing during October, during the playoffs and the World Series. And we were looking at new ways to engage, and, a few light bulbs went off. And I think just the way that we are conducting our day to day, you can do more, and you can do more interesting things. I mean, I think the 49ers are showing that with their 49ers program that they're doing on Vine. And I think Vine is just kind of scratching the surface. There's so much more that teams and brands can do with that. And it's pretty interesting. But it's about, like you said, having the resources. I mean, doing those stop motion videos are something that takes time, and you've got to be really patient. You've got to be creative. And that's where you try to engage your video department to say, hey, here's what we can do, should help us. So I think it's a little of both. I think it's trying to find what that next new network is, and always kind of looking ahead and looking forward, but then also understanding that, wow, we've got a really engaged base. We've got, we've got a lot of channels already, are we fully maximizing what we can do on there, or is there more? Can we get better? And I think that's really where we put most of our resources. And like I said, having things like the cafe, or finding new ways to make an announcement, or to find new ways to entertain your fans using social media. And I think, there's so many cross platforms that, allow you to do something online and offline. And that's where, I think organizations are really going to find the best advantage of social media within their marketing strategies, where it just doesn't live on its own, but it kind of manifests. So it's a 360 experience for the fan, that they can find something offline and it connects to something online, and it makes a lot of sense. So that's, I think, where we're putting more of our time and energy toward. But we're always, or at least I'm always, like you said, at conferences or on Twitter chats or reading blogs to kind of see what are the trends, what are people talking about, what's the next big thing, is it there, or do we just find new ways to do old things?
Yeah, and it has to come back to, I guess, what your strategy is overall for how you want to engage your fans, and what your goals of your department from a digital point of view is. I mean, if you want traffic and keep driving people to your website, then you wouldn't think that, Instagram is never going to work for me, because you still can't put a link.
Right.
And really, if anyone at Instagram's listening, can we just put links on images? It would make everyone's job easier. But it's a pure.
Can we switch
and multi-user accounts
too. Right.
Multi-user accounts is the other request we have for everybody who's listening, who pretty much leaves their own personal Instagram as dormant because they have to run a team account. But it is a matter of, so
that would be me, Sean. That's exactly what my deal. I have a very boring Instagram life because I'm managing the Giants account. So not that I have anything interesting, but you're right. So,
but some of them are pure engagement. So, Instagram is a pure engagement play. Snapchat potentially is just in that space, because it is just pushing it out there, and it's going to go in 24 hours. But for some organizations, you do want to engage that fan base, and it might take you 10 Snapchats to engage that 17 to 23-year-old with the Giants, but then they start being engaged with your other content. They might come across to Instagram, or they might start following you on Twitter, and it really just increases their fandom. So it is a long game, and so it's very hard when you're going out and trying out these new platforms. If someone comes back to you and says, well, what's the return on us doing Snapchat? Because you can't come back and say, it's driving this traffic straight away. There's a bit of a longer game to be played.
And it's absolutely true. And that's and I did hear that question, what is the ROI, or what, and it was someone in PR from another team asking me that. And I was like scratching my head. I'm like, why do you care about that? You're in public relations. Like, what's the ROI of public relations? How can you tell me, qualify, how much a press release, or, it's immeasurable, but it's also invaluable at the same time. And, I think you hit it on the head. It is, the long game. And I think a lot of brands kind of dismissed Twitter, and what happened was that they lost out. The brands that took advantage of that and were kind of forward thinking became leaders in that space, and many people then said, okay, we don't want to miss the boat again. And so, having Snapchat, I don't know. I'm not smart enough to tell you how to, where the future is at, and how a brand can monetize with that. But like you said, you have a very engaged young audience that, that we're trying to reach. And the Giants are a little different, because I feel we have a pretty young fan base, and our demographics do skew a little bit younger, but baseball in general is definitely, a sport that needs to, continue to think about the younger fans and connecting with kids and being, definitely more relevant in terms of an entertainment option. And I think social media is one of those huge opportunities for us. And so to think in that long game and to think about being creative, and that's where I think you asked me that earlier, what does it mean for you to be someone in the entertainment, lack of a better term, the entertainment industry? bring to the table in social media. And it's about, capturing your attention and getting your attention and telling that story. And so we have a young team and this great, all these, Hunter Pence and Madison Bumgarner, and Buster Posey and these great players and personalities. And how am I bringing that to to this youthful Giants fan base and trying to connect them? And it's using all these different channels and finding new ways to connect them in their own way, in their own language. I can't talk to them like I would, my peers. That's a different conversation. And that's why I think it's important to kind of engage with the younger staff as well and make sure that the messages that you're saying have the relevance and are, you're being used in that same way. But yeah, it is a long game. And it does take some trust, and it takes someone who is somewhat of a visionary to understand that in terms of your superiors of when they're, giving you the resources. So that's kind of where we are right now, is not knowing where the answers are, but you think that, okay, well, this makes sense and we're going to try it. And it's a lot of trial and error, and we don't know if it's right or wrong, but we've had success in the past. We've had a few missteps and we learn from those, but you can never be afraid to fail and to try something new. And I always feel that, people will look up to me, and I feel like I'm always studying other teams. I'm listening to your podcasts. I'm constantly, I think my advantage is I'm a big dork, so I find this stuff really interesting. It's my hobby too, so it's cool for me to be more interested in the social media of a game than the actual game. So I'll follow a lot of stuff on Twitter and read a lot of blogs afterwards. So you can always learn more, and I think that's the cool thing, is it's matured to a point, but there's this next generation coming in with newer ideas and fresher ideas of how to tell that same story. And I think that's where I'm, really finding myself the most challenges. Like, okay, we've done all this for 4 or 5 seasons now. What's the 2.0 and how we, take social media to that level?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of my best answers to the ROI question comes from Gary Vaynerchuk, who, if someone asks him about the ROI of social media, he replies with, "What's the ROI of your mother?" Which is just as flummoxing for the person, and it makes them pause and think, because it is that kind of question. And the industry has developed enough that we've already got case studies there now, because the same question would have been asked of Instagram. And now AT&T Park is one of the most Instagram ballparks in the world. And so people see that in their feed and they want to come to the game. Now, it is hard to quantify, but the fact that how many pieces of content get pushed out, that you can come back to them and say, well, look at all this free advertising that is happening that's promoting a positive experience. And that's the same that is happening on Snapchat. Like, I haven't been big on Snapchat because it doesn't have that viral nature, and it's, you're putting out a snap and you can't see it, going to many people. And so you don't get that big bang because you've got these limited resources. It's, I'm of the opinion that you can put it out on a platform that can go viral and get more reach. But if you do want to be engaged with that audience, and that audience is using those platforms, then it does make sense, and be tactical about it. And I guess the other thing is, you were just talking about before, effectively doing market research with teenagers, and that I've got 2 teenagers, so I do the same. But people keep asking me, how do I get into sports and the sports digital business? There's your opportunity. If you're using these new platforms natively and innovatively, and that's pretty much what the 40 Viners are. They're a group that were doing Vines that are effectively now producing them for the 49ers. Like, that's a way in, because you're right. You don't have either the time or resources to produce, killer Vines or understand the idiosyncrasies of Snapchat or whatever's next. But if you come out and say, I know this platform backwards, pretty much the same as Adam Bader's discussion from Real Madrid. He knew Twitter inside out when Real Madrid were looking to amp up their Twitter presence. Those new platforms that, guys like yourself and me are going to say, I really need someone to be able to cover that sporting event using Vine really effectively. And rather than have to train these new staff up, they should come with the skills because they're using the platforms themselves. Yeah,
no, I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. And that's a great point there, Sean, about, looking at these new opportunities and looking to say, how do you break in, and what are these, where's the future? And I think it's really, it's that time of year where I'm starting to get, different bloggers and questions. What do you, make your predictions for next year, which I never do because they're never right. But
no one ever reads them back in December, though, Bryan.
No, you're right. That's true. I save all that stuff and then put it in my queue a year later to see who was right. But but listen, micro content, is a big deal, and it's not even just putting your. I talked to our video department. I said, you guys are making amazing videos and make a large quantity of videos, but GIF form has been or GIFs have been very popular for us. Vines are very popular for us. Just the micro content of, really short video formatting, the pictures, and the way, kind of the infographic age has really exploded, and fans are just, they love content that they could consume instantly, and like you said, if it's shareable. And I think that's really a huge opportunity for different people. And again, I'm not one that I don't really have an artistic ability. I think I have great vision. I think I know what I want. I just can't create it. So I look for the talented people that can take the really cool photos or videos, who can edit, who can create graphic design, and kind of say that's what we're looking to do, is finding people that can do that. And I think that's a great opportunity for those. So it's more than just, hey, like you said, Twitter was kind of there were a lot of teams that, and I think there's still teams that, can use some help in terms of what their personality is, or reaching more fans, or creating more, more that you can do on these different platforms. But I think the content is really the basis of what the next wave of kind of young social media professionals will be.
On a few things on, keeping up with what you need to keep up with. Facebook recently have made a few changes around, or at least announced them. Announced things like they're going to limit promotional posts, and even just earlier today talked about opening up Facebook search. Where, again, it's really early to try to predict what's going to happen, but where do you see that sort of space? Things like Edge Rank, and people saying that pages aren't getting the reach you need. How are you playing in that space and keeping an eye on how things are moving?
Well, and I understand that from a business standpoint, and from being frustrated with, wow, we can't get our reach, but that's Facebook's business model. Now, as a Facebook shareholder, I really like that, because they've been very successful with monetizing in that format. But I will say this, during the World Series, our reach was phenomenal. And I mean, in certain cases beyond, the number of followers that we had. So, I mean, and I also read this to say, it's more about the way that you're connecting with fans. And I think it is true. And it's, when you want to, and let's just keep in the sports world, that, obviously when your fans are more engaged and you have more entertaining or engaging content, you're going to do better, versus, hey, and we all have to sell tickets, we all have to promote auctions or on sales of some sort, and that's part of our overall strategy, and it's our job to make those as popular and as far reaching as possible. But when Madison Bumgarner, when he was just announced today, he was the Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year. That content's going to get much farther reach and much more entertaining, because it's a momentous occasion. So it's up to us to kind of take advantage of that. So when Facebook said that, and I guess there's two ways to look at it. Sure, they're going to eliminate you from posting directly to sell promotional and ask you to pay for that to get that reach. But I think overall it's better for the user to kind of clean up, and I kind of maybe I'm too naive, but I kind of buy into what Facebook is trying to clean up their news feeds to make it so it's a better experience. I mean, let's face it, our news feeds are sometimes kind of junky, and there's spam in there, and there's things that you don't really want to see that and maybe that's why we're some of us like Twitter better, but I kind of like that. in terms of the search, I just was reading that today, and I'm not quite sure what that means, but I'm all about, making, innovating the different networks, and you got to be careful because, people complain a lot, but, they're not, Facebook's free to, it's a free platform, and no one's forcing you to be on it. So, it's one of those deals that that's the media choice, and you can look at it several different ways. But I kind of like what they're doing for the user, and I think to keep people engaged. And we had a lot of really positive experiences this year on Facebook, despite the edge rank or the newsfeed kind of tweaks that they made. So, and obviously when you win, it's easy for me to say, but it just also shows me that it's still a very valuable tool, especially getting your message out to the masses.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think what you've got to do as someone who's running a brand page, you've got to always put yourself in the shoes of the fan, because that's what effectively what Mark Zuckerberg's doing and what they're doing with all the tweaks. Everything, at least that's what I think from everything that they're pushing out there, is that they want to make sure that the fans see what they want to see. So you've got to make sure you're pushing them out content that they want to see. So for me, when I read that stuff about the promotional posts, it's really looking to penalise bad marketers and poorly crafted posts. So I see it as a massive opportunity if you're pushing out content that your fans like, and sports teams always have content that is of that nature. Anytime there's a win or anytime there's an anticipation of a big game, they want to engage and they want to like and they want to comment. So there's always a way for sports teams to effectively bust out of the of the edge rank. I'm sure it's tough if you're going through a losing streak. If looking back at, say, the Philadelphia 76ers losing 17 games in a row, I'm sure their edge rank's not great. But as soon as they have that one win and they put out the right piece of content, I'm sure all the fans were all over it, and it course corrects itself. So for mine, it is just a matter of pulling back on things that might be promotional and pushing them to advertising, which they are on other channels. Because I think if there are any trends for the next year, it will be around that social commerce space, both from a Facebook and Twitter, and being ability to buy something directly in either a post or in a tweet. And then we could talk about some serious ROI. If you were able to put out, hey guys, here's the World Series T-shirt, just click here and buy. Like, it's right moment, right time, and there will be, some serious money flowing in. Yeah,
no, and you're right. I mean, and part of it is sometimes not overthinking it, and it is about the moment. I was reading, I guess Guy Kawasaki has a new book coming out, and one of his tips is, retweet the same thing, up to like 6 to 8 times a day, to get the optimum engagement. So I don't necessarily buy into that, but it's always, there is, it's part art and part science. And the art is, how you, post it. Is it a photo? Is it, something witty? The science of it is, how do you do it and when do you do it? And I think, us as so-called experts in our field, it's our job to kind of, learn and study and do a lot of testing about that. And in no way do I consider myself an expert, but my company, they think I'm an expert, and I have to deliver results on the best way to, to sell tickets or to, promote the book that's on sale. They don't tell me how to do it. They just tell me, here's the messages and you do it. And it's up to us to understand what's the best way within our fan base and within the networks that we have. And on top of that, we're balancing all the other messages as well. And so, and I've said this a few times, to some of our colleagues and friends, you have all these different messages and you're trying to balance them with, just news and entertainment and education and other things that we're trying to get our fan base, connected to. Because if we just turn into this one big, Amazon marketplace, then we're going to lose a lot of fans' attention. So it's our job to make it so it's not, so it isn't that way. And when we do have something to sell, it's something of value, and it's something that we can really target those who we think would like it at that right time. Like you said, it's the timing of it is the most critical part, in my opinion.
So on that science, and I agree, it is part art, part science. On the science side, from a stats and the metrics point of view, what are some of the key numbers that you're always looking for, and to sort of know that what I'm doing is working, or I'm on the right track? Is there any particular metrics that are your go-to metrics on any particular platform?
And that's a great, I guess on Twitter, I really look at retweets as the most important to me. I'll look at all, and I get talks about, and ask, I think at the end of the day, if you have zero money and you don't have a lot of time, I look at shares on Facebook and retweets on Twitter. I think, and I don't know, we have, I'm embarrassed. I think we have like almost 700,000 on Twitter. Maybe
700,000 on Twitter and 2.8 million on Facebook.
So I probably should have 10% of that. But for some reason, I always just like 1,000 retweets. I think that always looks good, and I just have used that as kind of an easy barometer. Now, obviously, I'll take a deeper look now and then, and I'll look at a certain few things and what was our best and what was our worst and why was this the best. But I like that. I think the retweet does so much because, like you said, that's what makes it go viral, and that's what people will respond to when they see it. And oftentimes, it's not. And again, I know it's digital. I still believe, though, that sometimes it's just part of the process. They might not click it. They might not, go directly to what you say. But the more that they see that, the Giants are in town, that they're giving this away, they might buy tickets, an hour later, a day later, because of that tweet they saw, because of that Facebook post, not directly from that. Much like they see a billboard or they see a TV commercial, it's all part of that psychological process. So, and then I also think that it's the more people share, that's. When you're sharing something on your feed, that means that you not only do you like it, but you think it's cool enough that you're representing it. So it's one thing to get clicks, and you obviously want that, especially if it's a video or a photo. But the share is a big one to me, and so I really take that one as the most. That's the highest on the metric food chain as far as I'm concerned, because it means that you're cool enough to be. To share it on their networks.
But it's also there was also some interesting articles recently around, I guess, the term dark social and where the traffic's going, and it does show even content that you might not be sharing on Facebook or Twitter on how much content is actually being shared on Facebook, and the amount of traffic that's driving. And part of that is you conditioning the fans to see all your content. But the amount of content that is getting shared without you knowing, whether it be in, and the guys at Valencia in Italy did a study, and WhatsApp's actually really big in Europe, and they were finding that there was a lot of content being shared internally, privately with WhatsApp, and then as well the same is happening in Facebook. So, it's again, if you're looking for those numbers, and traffic's always a big one for people running digital departments. You really can't discount all the stuff that's happening that you can't see. Like, people still want to share their information about their Giants. They don't have to always do it publicly, and they don't always have to mention you on your Twitter feed. They're just sharing it, anyway.
And that's fascinating. And the other thing is, because we're in the sports industry, we have the ROI isn't always, direct sales. It comes in the way of sponsorship.
Yeah.
And the way that we attract sponsors is having a really engaged social media feed. And it's not just number of followers, although that's definitely, probably the biggest number, but it's kind of the overall presence of your social media feed. And we have a number of sponsors that take advantage of that and love the fact that, how engaged our fans are. They love the way that we're engaging with them. And that's brought them on as sponsors, or it's helped them invest more into our social media sponsorship. So I think that's the other side of it too. It's not just about, the ROI and show me these reports. It's looking at the whole picture. And I think that really is, and we haven't seen, I don't think we've seen a full, and I kind of have, be careful what you ask for, because again, I don't want everything to become sponsored. But I think that we have a few sponsors. Virgin America, for one, who really takes advantage and does a lot of cool things within our social media strategies, and takes advantage of it in a sponsorship that they put together with us. So I think that's the other mechanism to look for. But you're right about the dark social media, and something that I'm still learning about and interested to see more of. And we hear a lot of people talk about our social media, but the more that we engage with our fans and learn from them what they like, what they don't like, then that obviously helps us. So it's not just me sitting in a room just posting all this and then walking away. There's a lot of before and after conversations as well, to try to see how can we get better, basically.
One thing I wanted to finish up with, I've talked about it before on the podcast, but I wanted to get your point of view from the inside. Tell us a little bit about being part of the Bat Kid story.
I think we just had our 1 year anniversary, because it was last November.
Yep.
This is a fascinating story because, I basically heard about it through our public affairs department. Shayna Dahm had sent me an email and said, "Bryan, we're doing this. It's kind of quiet, but here's the idea." And I was like, "Oh, what a cute idea! This is really cool." I didn't understand kind of how I don't think anyone did how big it was going to get. But for those who don't know, there was a boy who was quite sick, and his dream was to be Batman. He loved Batman. So the Make-A-Wish Foundation here in America put this program together in the city of San Francisco. They kind of went around and said, "Let's make this a really special day, and we'll set up like some villains around town, and the Bat Kid, he's like 8 years old, will go around and dressed up as Batman and his Batmobile and save the day." And one of the things he was going to do was to save our mascot Lucille, who was arrested by captured by the Joker.
Yep.
It was the Joker. So that was and he was going to end up at AT&T Park. So that's how we kind of got involved. Well, the morning of, you can kind of see it swelling on social media. More and more people were talking about it, and sometimes when you're on social media, things seem a lot bigger than they really are. You're like, "Oh wow, a lot of people are talking about this." But then when I saw the video of downtown, and there were literally thousands of people lined out to see the Bat Kid, and major media outlets, and you could just see it kind of growing, and it was unbelievable. Now, he wasn't supposed to come to the park until middle of the afternoon, like 2:00, and so someone I was working with, Paul Hodges, we're on the phone, and he's like, "We should live stream this. This is getting kind of big."
Yeah.
So we decided to let's live stream it, and so we just put our cameras, and there's Lucille, and then he comes, and by the time he came, and I think we had like 80,000 viewers at one time, which is a lot for us. We didn't really promote it. We just clicked, said, "Hey, here it is. The Bat Kid's coming," and we were obviously doing a lot of social media behind the scenes, just kind of capturing it. But it just at that point had gotten so big that all of a sudden, and really the Giants were just participants in this. We weren't the ones who put it on, but we got a lot of the credit because it was at our ballpark, and we started to show it, and it became a major story for us. And it was just an amazing day. And then we had the Bat Kid out for opening day in April, and he came out and he threw the first pitch. And the fans just went crazy. So he's a rock star, obviously, and got international acclaim that day. The president sent a Vine video congratulating him. So it was really this amazing story that was magnified by social media, and it just kind of, as just got to a point of where it became, the story was not so much social media, but social media helped propel that, to everyone, and you could kind of see it. And it was just one of those really neat feelings that everyone kind of had. It was unexpected, to say the least, and Really good to see, the good of social media and people coming together, at least for one day. So that was a really neat story that we were very humbled to be a part of.
Yeah, I think I woke up on a Saturday morning and my timeline was filled with stories of the Bat Kid, and so the first thing I had my radio segment Saturday morning, and so I spent the morning talking about it because it was just everywhere, and it's good having those stories from a social point of view, because there's every now and again you get ones that around trolls and all that kind of stuff, but it's great to see those positive stories. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Looking forward to catching up with you when I'm in San Francisco for SEAT next year. Looking forward to hearing more about the Giants and everything that's happening in San Francisco. But thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Sean, it's been a pleasure. I'm a big fan, like I said. I appreciate the time. I'm looking forward to, even though it's in San Francisco, I like these. Everyone's more than welcome to come, but last year I couldn't make Miami, and it's kind of like my little vacations when I get to go to these really cool conferences. But I think it'll be great in San Francisco. I think it'll bring a lot of fans. And I can't wait to meet you face to face, and we'll have a lot more to talk about.
Sign up for the Sports Geek News at sportsgeekhq.com/SGN.
Thanks again to Bryan Srabian there from the San Francisco Giants. Very generous with his time, and I hope you don't mind that we have ticked over the 1 hour mark, but I will get out of this episode rather quickly. Thanks again for listening. You can find all the episodes at sportsgeekhq.com/SGP. You can go to the guest page and connect with people like Bryan Srabian, SRabe on Twitter. I'm sure you're all following him. If not, as I say, you're not doing this internet thing correctly. Please send in your feedback on this episode, whether it is via Twitter or even via email. Send me an email, Sean@sportsgeekhq.com, and tell me where you're listening and what episodes you're liking, because this podcast is built for you, the people who are listening and working in the sports business. So that clock is telling me to get out of this episode. We've hit the 1:02 mark, and if you've continued to run or you're in the gym listening to this whole episode, well, I'm glad you've had a good workout. This is episode 72. You can find the show notes at sportsgeekhq.com/72. The same you can with every single episode of the Sports Geek podcast. For those who are going to join us in SEAT, make sure you secure your registrations to go to SEAT. I've been speaking to Christine recently on planning for the conference. We've got some great ideas for the digital track, and you also know by listening to Russell Scabetti, Fiona Green and the like from the CRM track, and I also know that Katie Panter and Todd Cafflish and the CEO track is coming along nicely, so I hope to see you there. Again, if you're in Australia and New Zealand and want to come along and go on my little pre-trip prior to SEAT, please contact me, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. I'm putting together some of those site visits and meetings right now, and I really need you to confirm both that you're going to be at SEAT, but that you do want to come along. I've got a few people locked and loaded and booked in already. I'm really looking forward to taking over a really engaged crew and show my US friends more of what Australia is doing in the sports marketing digital sense, and also from a CRM point of view. That's it from me. Thank you again for listening and sticking through to the end of this podcast. My name is Sean Callanan from Sports Geek, and until next week or the next time I get a podcast out, thank you very much for listening. Cheers.
Check out which teams work with Sports Geek at sportsgeekhq.com/clients. Find all Sports Geek podcasts at sportsgeekhq.com/SGP. Send in your sounds of the game. Email Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. Thanks for listening to the Sports Geek Podcast.